Adkins, who says Democrats still aren't happy with the bill.
Pension portion of employees, the 9,000 that are already part of the pension system, and whether this bill violates the inviolable contract. That's still a question that's out there. So I think that Joe Graviss and I think Buddy Wheatley have made some good recommendations that need to be looked at. We've sent letters to the governor, as you know, and asked him to come and address our caucus. We want to understand this bill better. It's a complex issue, but we believe we have recommendations that really the folks in the House Democratic Caucus have worked very hard on. And we think it's recommendations that could actually bring about bipartisan support for this bill. But, you know, the process doesn't work if somebody has an opinion and they believe that's the only opinion that can be made.
As I understand it, this bill, other than the rate freeze, nothing would actually be enacted, though, until after the end of the 2020 session. So couldn't you pass the bill, get the freeze, and then come back?
Well, the governor's bill does more than just freeze the rate. The governor's bill does bring in those 9,000 pensioners, those 9,000 employees who are in the pension system. It does impact them. A part of that bill, you read it, it will tell you that the pensions and how this bill works, of whether you basically, if you got a quasi-government that can't pay their part that they need to pay when it comes to the pension obligation, the rate that they have to pay. If they can't pay that, this bill basically takes over you know, the ownership basically of their organization. And that is really troublesome to quasi-governments all across Kentucky, that's a part of this bill. It also has got a part of that bill that if it is taken to court and one part of it is stricken as being unconstitutional, the whole bill falls. That's another potential problem with this bill as well. So for them to say it only frees the rate is not true. If you only want to freeze the rate, then let's do that.
Obviously, floor amendments are a possibility.
Sure.
Do you think that Representative Wheatley and Graviss's bill might be a floor amendment?
Well, I think it definitely could be, but we're also hearing that the call could possibly be written so strict that the only bill that could be considered is basically the governor's bill. Now, you would have to spend a lot of time writing the call that could be the only thing that could be considered, but potentially that's what we're hearing, that they could be writing that call so strict and so stringent that the only bill that could be looked at, or the only language that could be looked at, is basically the governor's bill. Now, I question whether you could do that or not, whether you could completely not allow members to offer amendments. Now, the speaker could rule them out of order.
Representative Graviss said he looked at a version of BR19, so the new one, and it said makes an appropriation that, and then he said that they almost gave a committee sub where it didn't say that in the one he got that day.
You know, there can be a lot of titles that says make an appropriation thereof. You've probably seen bills pass on the House floor that have done that didn't actually have an appropriation in it. But we believe that when it says to make an appropriation thereof, then with a bill this complex and a bill that does cost money, and a bill that basically, when you look at freezing the rate, is going to be a potential financial liability down the road of paying off that unfunded liability, of paying that amount of contribution that has to be made by those quasi-governments, then we continue to say, and I do, that the potential is there, that there is an appropriation within this bill that is mandating future budgets to appropriate the resources needed. The reason the governor's bill has problems, if they believe it takes 51 votes, and you have super majorities in both chambers, and you're struggling over the weeks and months that we are now in to get to 51, and now you say you're at 51, that should tell people something.